This time on The American Veteran. A new leader for the nation's largest integrated healthcare system.
We're here for you. That's the only reason we exist, is to provide services and a whole spectrum of things for the veteran. We're an organization that is service-oriented. It's a great mission.
A conversation with VA's new Secretary for Health, Dr. Michael J. Cussman. Plus, news you can use. The American Veteran is next. Hello, I'm Kane Fairbaugh. Welcome to The American Veteran, a public affairs program produced by the Department of Veterans Affairs. In this episode, Jim Benson visits with Dr. Michael J. Cussman, the newly confirmed Undersecretary for Health of the Department of Veterans Affairs. In his new post, Dr. Cussman plays a key leadership role in a system that cares for 5.1 million veterans yearly.
Thanks, Kane. I'm here with Dr. Michael Cussman. Dr. Cussman, thanks for taking time in your busy schedule to be with us today. And congratulations on your recent confirmation by the Senate for the position of Undersecretary for Health for the Department of Veterans Affairs. That's great.
Well, thank you very much.
Can you tell us a little bit about the scope of your responsibilities and duties for such a large organization as VHA?
Well, I'm truly honored and humbled by the opportunity to run the largest integrated healthcare system in the country. We have almost 200,000 people who work for the Veterans Health Administration, 155 hospitals, 1,400 sites of care, and a budget that's probably going to be in the range of $38 billion.
That's an incredible amount of things to keep track of. Now, you're a veteran yourself, a retired Army physician who's had many command opportunities, both from a hospital all the way to command levels, and including a tour at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. What drew you to VA after all that service in terms of either the mission or other things, as opposed to private practice or going to teaching?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I retired in September of 2000. And actually what I was looking for is an opportunity to continue to serve. Even though I was taking my uniform off after over a quarter of a century of service. And the VA, much to my appreciation, offered me an opportunity to continue to do so. So I'm eternally grateful to the VA for offering me that opportunity.
Well, a number of studies recently have highlighted VA's new leadership role in healthcare delivery and quality. How has VA managed to turn that around in such a short period of time?
Well, I think that we're 10 years into a tectonic shift, if you will, of care. We went from a hospital-based system to a clinic-based system in the mid-90s. And we put a lot of emphasis on performance and outcomes and quality. And I think that just drove the system to the position that we're in, which would be arguably the best care anywhere.
And that quality performance is something that we have a particular advantage on because of the way our system is structured, correct?
Well, that's correct. I mean, we're a system that is self-contained to a large degree, and we can then set up procedures and policies and directives that will maintain the quality. But also we have an advantage of having the most sophisticated, best electronic health record in the world. And so that's allowed us to monitor what we're doing and look at outcomes.
Well, that really brings me to the next point, because that has been cited individually as one of the great achievements for VA and how we use that. How does it specifically contribute to the improvement of health care for veterans?
Well, first of all, it was built by the people who are providing care. I mean, it was developed over a quarter of a century, actually, of little here, a little there, and then testing things and getting the buy-in of the providers. That's always been a challenge with electronic health systems in the country, where some of the physicians or other providers don't see it as a value-added or a costly thing. So we've been very fortunate that we actually were a homegrown system. But that allows us to monitor, keep track of what we are doing. For instance, just using Hurricane Katrina as an example, we lost no records. They were electronically transferred from our hospital in New Orleans, and wherever the patients went when they moved from New Orleans, they could just go in and their records could be pulled up. So it's situations like that in the day-to-day operation.
That's an amazing success story. And this also ties in with President Bush's plan, a long-term plan for having more people on the electronic record system.
That's correct. One of the president's initiatives is to have the electronic health record put everywhere in the country. And it was, when he rolled out this initiative, there was no mistake why he went to Baltimore VA to use that as his platform, and we were very proud of that.
Well, now, we've seen stories about more than 200,000 veterans who have come so far to VA, who have served in Iraq and Afghanistan in those tours. More are on the way. What is VA really prepared to do to how to meet their needs and take care of them?
Well, that's really one of our highest, if not our highest, goal right now is to take care of these new veterans. There have been about 660,000 service members who have left the Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines, having served in about half National Guard and Reserve, half regular component. And about a third of them, with the latest numbers, have come to the VA for a whole myriad of different things. But even with this significant influx of patients, we see this year we expect to be over 5.5 million veterans, and next year we'll be up as 5.8. So even though it's a large influx, it's relatively small in comparison to the total number of veterans we see. Obviously, if all 220,000 showed up in one place, it would be an overwhelming responsibility, but they're spread out all over the country.
Now, I know that one of the things you talked a lot about is outreach to the veterans and those coming to VA. Recently, you had a Welcome Home Hero event. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, one of our goals is to be sure that people who are eligible for care at the VA or benefits or whatever know what they can get and then choose, if they want to take advantage of that. I put out a directive not so long ago that encouraged or directed each of our facilities to have this Welcome Home opportunity or event in every facility at least once a year. And the Washington VA Medical Center did their first one a couple of Saturdays ago. It was an absolutely marvelous success.
That's great to hear. And I know that one of the things they mentioned too about the benefits that are available is that we're including more benefits for families and getting them involved as well in this process. How does that work out so far? Well,
we want to be sure that the families, who are an integral part, obviously, of the veterans' well-being, also can assist by knowing what the services are and help the veteran if he or she needs it, to work through the process of getting those benefits. We also realize that, particularly with illnesses like TBI or PTSD, you can't treat the veteran in a vacuum. And so although we're limited in our ability to actually directly care for family members because we're not authorized to do that, but we are kind of pushing the envelope pretty hard on that to be sure that the families are taken in, their needs are recognized and worked on as well as the veterans.
When it comes to discussing injuries of OIF and the OEF conflict and the veterans that have suffered there, one of the new terms that have come into the dialogue has been polytrauma. Can you tell us about what that is and what VA is doing to respond to that need?
I look at it as there are three signature events that have medical events that have occurred during this war. Everybody's heard about TBI, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But one of the ones that we're seeing that is less well known is what we've called multi-trauma or polytrauma. We created that term in the medical lexicon because one of the very good things that's happened in this war, that the survival rate is very high after you've been injured. Unless you are killed outright on the battlefield, the survival rate is very high. And we're all pleased with that because of the far-forward health care that the military is providing, as well as the body armor. The only negative side of it is that people are surviving with horrific and complex wounds. Instead of having just an amputation, I don't mean to minimize that, but we consider injuries like amputation, sight loss, significant TBI, spinal cord, severe mental illness, as part of severe illnesses. And sometimes these poor kids have all of these things. And so that's where we got to the term polytrauma or multi-trauma. And what we did to address that issue is that back in 1991, we established 4 traumatic brain injury centers as part of the Defense and Veterans Brain Injury Center that really has its home at Walter Reed. But we had partnered with them for the last 16 years. And when it became apparent that the service members were, especially when they had severe TBI, but they had more than that. And so we had to put the multidisciplinary approach together, because when they came to one of our TBI centers, they still might have had spinal cord or severe mental illness, amputation, sight loss. So we've really put something together that is unique in the country. There's no other, I believe, medical system that can provide that full service care in one place.
And that takes them through all these other transitions as they come out of recovery from each of these types of injuries?
That's correct. I mean, the DOD is not geared, never was geared to do significant long-term rehabilitation. That's always been the role of the VA, in a symbiotic relationship between the two administrations. But we've realized that, just having these 4 major centers isn't the end of this thing, because people live in different parts of the country. We have these 4 centers in Palo Alto, Minneapolis, Tampa, and Richmond. And if you're lucky enough to live near one of them, that's great, but most people don't. And so we put together a polytrauma system of care that is a series of graded levels of sophistication. Our polytrauma level 1 centers, the 4 that I have the most sophisticated, the full range of care. Then we each visit our Veterans Integrated Service Networks has a level 2, which is, has many of the same things, but maybe not the same sophistication. And then each facility is supposed to have a polytrauma team that can provide, perhaps at that level, more outpatient care than inpatient care. But what we try to do is push the services far forward, if you will, as close to home as possible.
So as they get better and better, they need less and less of the total care, and then they're closer to home when they do need it. Well, as we learned from our Vietnam lessons, the mind as well as the body is a victim of war, and you've already mentioned 2 of the key things with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. What kinds of programs are VA working to really address those issues?
Well, first and foremost, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, really only came into the medical literature in the lexicon in 1980, 81, and it grew out of Vietnam. It was never determined. I mean, you could, we look back retrospectively, shell shock and all these other things indeed might have been PTSD, but the VA has taken the lead in that ever since that point, and we have probably the world's best center in White River Junction, our National Center on PTSD, that's looked upon as an international asset, looking at research, treatment, and things related to PTSD. We've tried to learn from our previous experiences because it's clear that if you can get at people early when they have symptoms potentially related to PTSD, maybe you can prevent or at least ameliorate serious disease. In TBI, as I mentioned to you too, we were really a national leader in that going back to 1991. So we're very proud of the services that we have both in PTSD and TBI.
You say about all the quality services we have, and I'm sure many on active duty today have heard some of the challenges about moving from the military system to the VA healthcare system. So, but I understand you have an office dedicated to seamless transition. Can you give us a little feeling for what that term means and how that affects the veteran?
Seamless transition is just what it implies, is that what we need to do is make it easy for veterans or service members and their families to transition from one bureaucracy, DOD, to the Department of Veterans Affairs. And we shouldn't complicate that, particularly with people who are injured and stressed. And we've got to make it easy, not complicated. And again, it depends on what kind of transition you're talking about. I tend to describe it as big seamless transition and little seamless transition. Big seamless transition is every Tom, Dick, and Harriet who had a uniform on anywhere for 2 years to someone like myself who was over a quarter of a century. When you get out, you become a veteran, you get your DD-214, and there's a transition process. Some partake in it, some don't, but we need to be sure that we educate or provide everyone who's getting out the proper information, and we try to do that in several processes, a thing called the BDD, the Benefits Delivery at Discharge, the TAP program, is the Transition Assistance Program. And so that's for tens of thousands of people a year. When you talk about little seamless transition, I'm talking about the kids who have been really banged up here and how they're moving along. And that's always been a complex thing of the handoff, but back in the summer of 2003, when the war started to get wound up, we realized that we need to do something different here because the system's always been clunky and been challenging for people. So with Mr. Principi, the secretary of the VA at the time, he pointed his finger at me and said, fix this problem. And so what we did in an unprecedented way, put benefits counselors and VA social works, embedded them in the large DOD facilities that were taking the casualties and bringing them back. We also asked the Army, and the Army stood up and put active duty people in our 4 polytrauma centers where that seamless transition can be made easier because there were people actually helping them along the way. This has grown, it's changed, evolved, it's a quantum leap better than it was even when we started. And the latest thing that we've had is these transition patient advocates that we have. We've hired 100, that every one of the seriously injured people would have one of the or more of those deficits that I talked about, will have a transition patient advocate who will bond with them in the military facility and then follow them as they move potentially to one of our polytrauma centers, and eventually they get home, and they will help them as an ombudsman, if you will, for all the problems they might have, whether it's healthcare, whether it's benefits, or whether it's working with the Army, and that relationship will be developed and go on for years.
Well, much like the military says, in order to be successful, you have to have boots on the ground. So we have VA people in the military hospitals, military people in the VA hospitals, and we've got that integration so that that handoff is...
That's correct.
Well, you mentioned a moment ago, I know kind of a reference to Tom, Dick, and Harriet, but in fact that strikes a very important note as to the growing number of women in the military, in all services, and particularly now in combat roles and experiencing combat environments. What is VA doing to address their particular health concerns?
Well, this is a very important issue for us, and some people have criticized it to be a little slow on the draw on this, but I mean, clearly more and more veterans are women, and they have unique women's health issues, all the way from obstetrics to breast cancer and other gynecological things. And all our facilities have women's health clinics that are unique and set up to do that. Also, it appears that women may have different reactions to PTSD than men, and we have specialized treatment for women with PTSD, military sexual trauma. We have a program in Palo Alto that's very sophisticated for that, as well as an inpatient facility in Cincinnati that only caters to women. So this is very important to us. We provide a lot of care for women, but we're also very cognizant of the fact that, I mean, we have a lot of women veterans now who are in childbearing age, and we don't deliver babies. So we've contracted with appropriate facilities wherever we need to be to provide the full gamut of services.
Now, as the Chief Health Executive for the largest integrated health delivery system in the country, you have a lot of resources at your command. One of the most important, I understand, though, that you've talked about is your volunteers. Can you tell us about how important they are to the role and delivery of care to veterans?
Well, sure. I mean, they're worth their weight in gold. We have 200,000 people working for us, but we couldn't do it on our own. I mean, the volunteers, and generally a lot of them are family members of veterans or veterans themselves, and they bring an invaluable commodity to the arena, talking to the veterans and expressing their experiences and things. So it's just a wonderful organization. I don't remember exactly how many thousands of hours that they provide in manpower every year, but it's truly wonderful.
Well, now, everybody knows that you're running this large system, but it also has its own large-scale challenges as well. What do you see as some of the major things that you're going to try to tackle in terms of healthcare challenges for veterans in the next year? Well,
again, I think it goes back to our challenge of taking care of these new veterans while not forgetting about all the other veterans who we owe so much to in previous wars. But the future will depend on how well we take care of some of these new veterans and really focusing on their needs. They're a different generation of veteran. They have different expectations and needs. Looking at particularly the TBI and the PTSD and other types of issues, the hidden illnesses, as Senator Kaka talks about, and we have to be cognizant of that and emphasizing access and quality care and continuing to build on all the positive things that we've done.
Is there one last bit of advice or comment or invitation you'd like to make to both the active duty service members as well as our veteran population?
We're here for you. That's the only reason we exist, is to provide services and a whole spectrum of things for the veteran. We're an organization that is service-oriented. It's a great mission. We have great people, and I think we're doing a very good job. We're not perfect, and so when we make mistakes or things don't go well, we want to hear about it from our constituents, and we'll accept responsibility for it and fix it. But it's a great organization that's here for the veteran, and that we want you to take advantage of that.
Dr. Gussman, again, congratulations, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Back to you, Kane.
VA healthcare has an annual budget of approximately $34 billion. It employs more than 198,000 healthcare professionals and support staff at more than 1,400 sites of care. Now for some news you can use. It's easier for next of kin and loved ones to request presidential memorial certificates. The engraved certificates are signed by the President and express the country's grateful recognition of the veteran's service in the United States Armed Forces. You can get the request form online at www.va.gov/veterans. VA forms. Helping integrate wounded warriors back into society. That's the mission of the Coalition to Salute America's Heroes. Recently, country music singer LeAnn Rimes helped out. She presented injured Seabee Navy Petty Officer First Class Peter Reed and his family a handicapped accessible van donated by Chevrolet. The Reeds say it will make a big difference in their lives. If you would like to volunteer for the Coalition, or if you are a recently wounded or disabled veteran, check out their website at www.saluteheroes.org. A Georgia company is offering one of its mobility assistance products free to World War II veterans. Can-Am Care is offering its Hugo folding cane. Can-Am Care says it's a way for them to honor and recognize the service of World War II veterans. If you're interested, call them toll-free at 1-888-412-4992 or check out their website at www.hugosalutes.com. All service members returning from Iraq or Afghanistan who seek treatment at Veterans Affairs hospitals are now being screened for any traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder. VA Secretary Jim Nicholson says whether they come to us with a toothache or a sore knee, we screen them for any form of brain injury, and we are now screening every one of them for post-traumatic stress disorder. So far, treatment has tended to focus on traumatic brain injuries involving open head wounds rather than the more subtle closed skull trauma that may account for many more combat injuries. A new loan program is now available to help veterans looking to start or grow their own businesses. Veteran business owners can borrow up to $500,000 with a Patriot Express loan, which can be used for startup or expansion of a business, equipment purchases, working capital, inventory, or business-occupied real estate purchases. The Patriot Express loans feature the Small Business Administration's lowest loan rates and fastest turnaround time for loan approvals. Contact your local Small Business Administration district office for listings of lenders in your area. Also, check the SBA website at www.sba.gov/Patriot Express. Finally, you may not know about a special insurance benefit available to veterans who have been severely injured in the line of duty. The Veterans Mortgage Life Insurance, or Vmli, is available to those veterans with severe disabilities who have received a VA Specially Adapted Housing Grant. The insurance covers up to $90,000 of outstanding debt on the housing grant in the event of death. New legislation is pending to extend the coverage to active duty service members who have yet to separate from the military. Learn more about the program at www.homeloans.va.gov. It's time to wrap up this edition of The American Veteran. As always, it's our honor and privilege to bring you these stories each month. If you'd like to contact the Department of Veterans Affairs for any reason, here are a few ways to do so. We leave you with pictures from the 27th National Veterans Wheelchair Games. Join us next time for a look at some of these remarkable athletes. For the Department of Veterans Affairs and the entire American Veteran staff, I'm Kane Fairbaugh. See you again.